ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So I have two. One actually happened to me, and then another happened to my cousin years ago. And their story is much more creepy, demonic, scary bedtime story, but I'll tell mine because that's my actual account. So backstory is that my parents, right before COVID, had bought a new home, and the story behind this home is that it had been built by a woman and her husband. It was a custom build, and it was the woman's dream home, and she was a talented artist. So she had painted a portrait of the front of the home, the front of the house, the landscaping. It was beautiful. Sadly, that couple died in a plane crash, so the house ended up going to the woman's mother. Obviously, the house had a lot of sentimental value to the mother. She didn't want to sell it, but my parents come from a very small community where kind of everyone knows everyone, or you get to know everyone. And because my parents had a prior relationship with this woman and she knew my parents were good people, after a while she was willing to sell the home to my parents. And this was right before COVID, and then in the middle of COVID and slightly after COVID, my parents strengthened the bond with this woman. And she's obviously an elderly woman, very up there in age. So my parents would check on her, they'd bring her stuff. My mom would bring her flowers. She'd send baked goods home to my parents. They had a very good relationship. They still have. That woman's fine. She's not dead. And over time, as a, I guess, anniversary present for moving into the home, that woman gifted my parents the portrait that her daughter had painted of the house itself. That portrait is still hung up in the walkway going into the living room downstairs. Now, this is going to be the winter of 2022. This is my first time back in the house since that portrait has gone up. And at the time, it's like 2 or 3 a.m., I'm laying in bed, and the layout of my room, my bed is pressed against the back wall, and from the foot of the bed forward, I can see the doorway, and when the doorway is open, I can see the stairwell that walks down into the first floor. Like, I can see the drop-off of the stairwell. And when I'm at home, I normally leave my door open at night because my parents have a cat. I like when the cat comes and sleeps with me. I leave the door open as an invitation to the cat. I'm laying in bed, pressed up against the pillows, scrolling on TikTok. My phone is directly in front of my face, and of course I have my peripheral vision on either side of my phone, and right on this side, right beside my phone case, I can see the open doorway leading out into the stairwell. Scrolling on my phone, all of a sudden I see a tall blonde woman, as clear as day, not any transparent entity, a tall blonde woman walk past my field of vision, going past my doorway into like the other hallway. My heart immediately sinks into my stomach. There are only 2 women in that home, me and my mother, who is a short redhead. That blonde woman is not my mom. I'm having a panic attack because my first thought is, oh my God, someone has been living upstairs in my parents' home and they have no idea. So I'm freaking out. Luckily, my mom has an elderly Yorkie that she has to let out in the middle of the night because elderly doggy needs to go out. And I hear my mom downstairs fumbling with the back door. So I immediately jump out of bed and I run into the hallway, and we have a banister that looks over from the second floor into the living room where my mom is standing. And I'm like, oh my God, Mom, I saw someone upstairs. And my mom's like very groggy. She just woke up to let her dog out. She's like, what did you say? And I told her, I saw a tall blonde woman walk past my doorway upstairs. And I'm clearly in a panic. My mother is not a care in the world. One important thing about my mom is that my mom has seen and heard spirits her entire life. My mom is actually a death clairvoyant. There have been many times in my lifetime that my mom has woken up in a cold sweat out of a dead sleep, knowing immediately that someone has died or has been fatally injured in our family, and she knows exactly who it is at the time. So my mom has a very live and let live policy when it comes to ghosts. They don't bother her and she doesn't bother them. So my mom just looks at me and I'm having a panic attack, and she says, just go to bed. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And I do, because at that moment, knowing how calm my mom is, the idea that a tall blonde woman is somewhere in her home doesn't bother her at all. Knowing my mom, I'm like, okay, there's a reason for it. Maybe I didn't see what I thought I saw. So I go back to my room, I shut the door, and I like put my covers over my head because if I can't see the ghost can't see me, and I eventually fell asleep after 2 to 3 hours. Next day, we're in the drive-thru at Dunkin' Donuts, and my mom finally looks at me and she's like, "Oh, hey, what happened last night? You were really freaked out." And I told her the story that I just told you guys. I was scrolling on my phone, tall blonde woman walks past the doorway just as clear as day. I could see the texture of her hair, I could see the side profile of her face. I saw a woman, and my mom grabs her phone and she scrolls through the messages that she has with the woman who sold her the home, and she pulls up a photo of the exact blonde woman that I saw that night, that very last night, and she's like, "Was this her?" And I said, "Yes." And that was the deceased woman who had the home custom built with her husband before they eventually passed away. And my mom said, "Yeah, I've been seeing her for months now. Ever since we brought the portrait into the house, I've been seeing and hearing her. She seems nice. It's technically her home. She doesn't bother me. I don't bother her. So your dad hasn't seen her, so everything's fine." And yeah, so my mother is coexisting with a ghost that my mom believes still technically owns the home. My dad has never seen this ghost. And this is the first time that I have ever seen a ghost. I've heard spirits throughout my life, but I've never physically seen one. So this one definitely took me by surprise. But yeah, that's my story. My cousin's story, once again, is much more like a scary bedtime story, but he swore until the day that he died that it happened, and I have no reason to not believe that, so I can definitely tell that one too.